what to study for the Bones lab exam. So you're gonna see on here under module 2 on Canvas, you will see 2 PowerPoint presentations. One that covers the axial skeleton, and the other one covers the appendicular skeleton. If you will notice, if you open the PowerPoint presentations, you will notice that you have underlined structures, and those are the ones that you need to know for the upcoming lab exam. So you need to be able to identify the bone as well as the marked structures. So, and I go over those in details in those video recordings. You have also the bones lists. So this is a list of all the bones and bone markings, as well as any important information that you might be tested on. So for example, on here, cranial bones, we've got frontal bone, parietal bone, occipital bone, and for each of them, you're gonna have multiple markings that you need to be able to identify on this bone. So frontal bone, you need to identify 2 structures, supraorbital foramen and the glabella. Occipital bone, you're gonna need to identify the foramen magnum, occipital condyles, external occipital crest, and protuberance, and so on. So you have 2 lists, a list that covers the axial skeleton. This is the one that you're gonna be looking at in here. And the other one that covers the appendicular skeleton, and it's gonna be going the same way. Clavicle, you have 2 main markings that you need to remember, but those are gonna be underlined in the PowerPoint presentation. But something that you won't find in the PowerPoint presentation is something like this. The information related to the bone marking or related to the bone. So for example, I have the clavicle, it has a sternal end. It's gonna be underlined in the PowerPoint presentation. Let me show you on here. For example, you see the sternal end is underlined. This is a structure that you need to be able to identify. But here on the PowerPoint presentation, it doesn't say, it doesn't give you more information about this marking, because I'm expecting you to look at the list while you are studying the bones. So sternal end is going to be attached to the manubrium of the sternum, and so on. So all the information that you're going to need to know for the bones, as well as the bone markings, is gonna be provided to you in those 2 lists. So those are 2 PDF files that you can find again under module 2. So if you go here, module 2, you'll see the 2 PowerPoint presentations, and you've got the appendicular and axial bones lists. If you want to download just one document that has all the markings, those are the same diagrams from the previous 2 presentations, but just combined into a single document for you to have better access to it. All right. I put here a note at the beginning of the presentations that you need not only to know all the underlined labels on the diagrams, you are also required to read the bones list. All right, it's very, very important. So what would I do after I study I go over those video recordings. I study the bones. I feel confident identifying the different bone markings. I highly recommend you to go and get the lab assignment completed. Go check the lab assignment, get it completed for you to have a different perspective for the bone. So in those video recordings, I use both visible body and those PowerPoint presentations. So you should be familiar after you watch those video recordings with how the bones look like on those diagrams, as well as how the bones look like on the visible body diagrams, which are the 3D models. I've completed the lab assignment. I feel confident that I'm able to identify those bones and landmarks because I've successfully completed the lab assignment and I didn't have any trouble knowing any of the marking or bones. What will I recommend to do next is to go to the bones final review, still under module 2 on campus. You go to the bones final review. It's a set of diagrams that you can download. This is a PowerPoint presentation where you can find the different bones and landmarks on here. And if you download this file and you open it on a laptop or a desktop, not on your phone, it will show you the description of the slide. And in the description of the slide, you will see the correct answers. I didn't want to put them on here because simply I want you to use this bones final review presentation for you to test yourself. So I want you to test yourself, check if you have few minutes available for you during lunchtime when you are working, test yourself. This is something that you're gonna be building up over time. All right, like the same like the tissues. It's not something that you will study overnight to be able to get it right. All right, so this is something that takes time for you to study. All right, and you need to study, review, and then study, and then review for the information to stick to your mind. All right, so I don't recommend you to look at the answers until you answer them on your own. So for example, I've completed the Excel skeleton today, completed the lectures, I've completed the assignment. I feel confident, so now it's time for me to test myself. Let's check how many would I be getting right, how many would I be getting wrong. Without looking at the answers, I will answer on my own. You need to be able to recall the name. Don't rely on choices that will be provided to you. So as you've seen in the tissues, you're going to be provided with a huge number of choices that you're going to be picking just one answer from. So it's not logical that you're going to be just relying on the fact that you're going to be provided with choices and you will figure this out on the test. So try to make sure that you are able to recall the information. So I won't look at the answers. I will start answering from number 1. So number 1 is frontal bone. I write it down. Number 2 is the glabella. Write it down. Number 3 is the zygomatic bone. I will write it down. And number 4 is the zygomatic process. I write down the answers. After I write down all the answers, I go back and check the correct answers. And I will check, this will allow me to figure out whether I've actually studied or not. All right. So keep this until the very end of your studying. All right, don't start with this. This is not a study guide. This is not a study guide. This is a practice tool. Do not use this as a study guide, because you're going to have some of the markings that are more than what you actually need. They are not on the list. So don't get confused, because at that time, this was an actual exam actually from a previous class that I've had. And they did have much more bone landmarks and much more information that was required from them. So for you, you stick just to the information provided on the list. If you see something that is not on the list, don't worry about it. All right, so something like the foramen lacerum, for example, foramen rotundum, the foramen spinosum, all those are not going to be on your list. The only ones that you have on your list is going to be here. Actually, two of them on here are on your list, which are the foramen magnum and the foramen ovale. All right, so don't get frustrated when you see that you have stuff that are not on your list. So this is still it's not gonna be required from you. All right. Again, where can you find this final review? The bones final review, you can find them under module 2 on chem. So you go to module 2, the very last file in module 2 is the bones final review PowerPoint presentation. All right, again, use this as your study tool for you to figure out whether you can recall the information that you studied or not. And if you didn't recall the information, don't just repeat the questions again. Go back and study from scratch the parts that you can't recall. All right, so don't just keep repeating the same questions, because your brain will trick you, will figure out this information, will figure out how to answer this exam or this review, and he is not capable actually to identify the bone or the bone landmark. Another very important thing that I want to mention is a lot of people spend a lot of time in the axial skeleton, in the skull. A lot of people spend a lot of time studying the axial skeleton, and they don't put enough time towards the appendicular skeleton. Both parts of the skeleton gonna be equally represented on your exam. So please make sure to not spend huge amount of time studying the axial skeleton and forget about the appendicular skeleton, because both are gonna be equally presented on the exam. So each of them gonna be representing 50% of the exam. All right. So this is very, very common to happen in this specific lab exam. All right. A lot of people would spend a lot of time studying the axial skeleton, and they will not be spending enough time to study the appendicular skeleton. This is pretty much all the announcements or the recommendations I wanted to address today. Do you have any question related to the upcoming exam or related to the material, the previous material, or the upcoming material?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me? This is Monica.
Mm-hmm.
So the good news is you've extended the date for the exam, so that gives us more time. But the bones lab is not open yet. Is that correct? Because when you go,
no, it's not open yet. It's not open yet. I will open it just 1 week before this new due date. So rather than being on July 9th, so you should have it open today, which is 1 week before this previous due date. I'm not showing you here. So you did have it due on July 9th, so you should have expected it to be open today. All right, but I've extended the due date to July 17th, so you should be expecting it to be available for you on July 10th.
okay, thank you, sir.
You're welcome. And today is July 2nd or 3rd. All right. Any other questions?
How many questions will be on the lab exam? I know it's going to be, an extensive
Yes.
multiple choice, and the time limit.
Usually the time limit is 1 minute per question.
Right. Okay.
And I usually add 50% more time to the exam. So if the exam was 100 questions, what I would do is I would give you 100 minutes and plus 50% of this. So I give you an extra 50 minutes. All right, so the total is going to be 150 minutes for an exam of 100 questions. All right. So 100 questions is going to be for a time limit of 150 minutes.
Okay. Thank
All right.
you.
You're welcome.